Senator Hatch earned his bachelor's degree in history from BYU and his law degree from the University of Pittsburgh. He practiced law first in Pennsylvania and then in Utah until his election to the United States Senate in 1976. Now in his sixth term, Senator Hatch serves as chairman of the Senate Republican High-Tech Task Force. Additionally, he is a member of numerous Senate committees, including the ranking member of the Senate Committee on Finance and former chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Mark Zuckerberg, who has asked us to call him Mark, founded Facebook while he was a student at Harvard University studying computer science. Named as Time Magazine's Person of the Year for 2010, the magazine noted that nearly half of all Americans have a Facebook account, and 70% of all Facebook users live outside of the United States. Now, as the company's CEO, Mark is responsible for setting the overall direction and product strategy for Facebook, the world's largest social network. Today's forum will take a question and answer format based on 450 questions that were submitted through the BYU Facebook page. Of course, all 450 of these cannot be dealt with in the time that we have. However, many shared common themes which Mark and Senator Hatch will now address. Please join me in welcoming Senator Hatch and Mark Zuckerberg to BYU.
It's with a great deal of pleasure that I introduce to you a friend of mine, Mark Zuckerberg, who is the CEO of Facebook at this special BYU forum. It's the first one he's ever done at any university. So you guys are really, really in good shape. I'm chairman of the high-tech task force for the Republicans back there in the United States Senate, and I invited Mark to come back and speak to our senators who are on that task force. And he came and just gave a tremendous lecture and brought us all up to speed to a degree on Facebook. It was a very, very good thing, and he did a very good job. But that's when I asked him, I said, how about coming out to Utah? And why don't you speak to some of our young people out there, all of whom love what you're doing? And he said yes. So I was really tickled with it. We've all been amazed by the growth and rapid integration of social networking sites into today's internet society. And Facebook embodies this new and exciting technology. I want Mark to know that the main reason I invited you here today, of course, was to get you to finally accept me as a friend. I also thought, Mark, just think what you could have been had you come to BYU. Now, it's hard to find anyone these days who hasn't used Facebook. Millions of users have found that with the click of a mouse, they can connect with family, friends, and in my case, even constituents. Now, Mark got started early. In high school, I think you started the Synapse media player. Yeah. As a high school student. And guess who wanted him? Microsoft wanted to hire him right there on the spot, and so did AOL. Two groups that I work with regularly and know very, very well. Mark has been so successful that he's actually developed Facebook to where they are upwards, they're moving towards 1 billion users. Now, when you stop and think about it, there are over 500 million right now and moving fast towards 1 billion all over the world. Now, there's no question that the Facebook community has fostered growth and innovation across industries, and it's changed the way we do business, changed the way we interact with each other, changed the way we debate political views, and it's even changed how we date, or how you date, I should say. Well, let's get on with the program because I know that many are anxious to hear from you. We decided that we would take Facebook questions from the BYU Facebook page and ask these questions, and I'm going to be interested in Mark's answers as much as you are. Let me ask the first one. Facebook is one of the many ideas and one of the few that succeeded How did it get off the ground? And has it turned out to be what you thought it would be? And do you believe that all tech startups have to go to Silicon Valley to get going?
So I'll jump into that in a second, but I just want to thank you for inviting me. It's an honor to be here with all of you guys today. I have to say, I'm a little bit nervous. I've never spoken to a stadium full of people before. We have a few BYU alums at Facebook who work with us, who traveled with me today to be here with you guys. So they're here. I just want to introduce them quickly. We have Alma Chow is on our legal team. He does open source law. And then Hans Fugel is on our engineering team doing data infrastructure. And Hannah Pritchett is on our user operations team helping out with our international expansion. So we have a pretty small company. It's only a couple of thousand people, so we're well represented here. So in terms of how we got started at Facebook, I built it when I built the first version, which is nothing like what we have now. It was incredibly simple. When I was a sophomore at Harvard. And I did this not because I was trying to build a company. As a matter of fact, I was quite certain that we weren't going to build a company, and that if a company was ever going to be built out of what we were doing, that someone much more qualified than me would do it. But I just built it because I wanted the product to exist at Harvard, where I was. And within a couple of weeks, about 2/3 of the students at Harvard had signed up and were using it. And we started getting these requests emailed into us from students mostly at neighboring schools, MIT, BU, BC, other Boston area schools, asking for us to expand it. And that's when I went from just working on it myself to getting my roommates and some friends involved, who was like, all right, I can't expand this by myself, I need some help. And then it kind of just got out of control from there. At the end of my sophomore year, I moved out to Silicon Valley. And the idea at the time was still not to start it as a company, but just that there are all these companies that come from Silicon Valley, so I figured I have something to learn. And my intention was to go back to Harvard at the end of the summer. But Harvard has this great program where you can take as much time off as you want. So I figured at the end of the summer, things were going pretty well, I'll take a term off. And then things kept on going well, I'll take another term off. And then a year, and then a couple years later, I'm like, all right, I guess I'm not going back to school. But it was lucky for me to go to Silicon Valley because it is an epicenter for technology. And I knew nothing, right, getting started. I knew nothing about setting up a company. I knew nothing about hiring great people. I knew nothing about raising money. And a lot of that stuff, there are just a lot of resources in Silicon Valley that help out. But what we see now is that you can really build a company like this anywhere in the world. And if I were doing it again, I probably wouldn't choose Silicon Valley. There's a lot of upsides and there's a lot of downsides to doing it. One of the big things that we try to do is we have this development platform so that all of the people who use Facebook can use a lot of different apps, right, and not just the stuff that we develop. And there's actually more than 1 million people around the world building apps. And there's one company here based in Provo, Family Link, that has this application, We're Related, that has more than 1 million users, right? So you can build really meaningful things no matter where you are. Any city, any country in the world. I think there are some good things about Silicon Valley, but you definitely don't have to be there.
Well, that's great, I'll tell you. We expect you to move up here as soon as you can. Actually, you'd love it. You'd love the skiing, you'd love the Four Seasons, you'd love everything about it. Well,
flying in last night, driving past the mountains, it did occur to me that I was coming here on a Friday afternoon and could hang out for the weekend and stay to go skiing. But I think my girlfriend, who is a medical student in the Bay Area, probably wouldn't be psyched if I moved to Utah.
I'm not so sure that's that good of an excuse between you and me. Let me ask you this question. This is one from our Facebook. Is management or marketing more important in predicting the success of a new business? with your experience, it'd be interesting to see your point of view there.
Well, so by management, do you mean people? Because I think that that's probably the biggest predictor. I mean, there are lots of different social networks that got started. In any given industry, there are lots of different folks trying to do the same thing. I mean, what made Google the best search engine, right? I mean, was it that they thought of the idea of a search engine and no one else did? No, I think that they just did a much better job of executing on that. And I think a lot of it comes down to the people. Now, I think one thing that gets blown out of proportion in our culture is the emphasis on the single person or the couple of people who are running something. So, a lot of people might know who I am, but the success of Facebook is really all about the team that we've built, right? And I think in any company that's going to be true. And one of the things that we've really focused on at Facebook is keeping the company as small as possible, right? One of the things that I'm really proud of is that we're able to serve so many people. I mean, it's more than 500 million people now, 500 million, but the company only has around 2,000 people. And if you think about that, that's kind of staggering. And how do you do that? Right? I think the answer to that question is you make sure that every person that you add to your company is really great. And I think that there are some companies that get built with that culture in mind and that get started by good people. And when you see those, I think you can tell that those are going to succeed, even if it's a really crowded space or if it's an industry that a lot of other companies are competing in.
That's great. These three over here look pretty bright to me, is all I can say, from BYU. There's a lot of others here who want to be with Facebook someday. Study hard. Let me just say this to you. I'm really impressed with all you've been able to do and how you've done it and how young you are to be able to be worth $13.5 billion, or at least that's the estimate. We'll put it that way. I've had at least 1,000 women call and say they want to marry you. Now, to us Mormons, that's not the way you get married. But let me just say this. We're really grateful to have you here. This is really good to hear you and hear you talk about how you've done this. It's really remarkable to me. But let me ask you this. For the benefit of everybody here, what classes would you recommend? What classes have been most beneficial to you as you've worked on these issues and worked on these problems? And if you had any suggestions to the folks here who might want to get into the same information technology areas that you are, or in general, what would be the classes you would suggest that they spend some time on?
Well, so I wasn't in school for that long. so I may be the wrong person to ask that question. But
shame on you is all I say.
But I think a lot of folks know, and I mean, when you introduced me, you said that I was a computer science major.
Right.
I actually was registered as a double major with computer science and psychology. And the thing that I think is really important about psychology is that all of these problems at the end of the day are human problems, right? And I think that that's one of the core insights that we try to apply to developing Facebook, is that there's all this information out there that people might be interested in or might want to look up. But the things that people are really most interested in are what's going on with the people they care about, right? And a lot of that information isn't on the internet today, right? So it's all about giving people the tools and the controls that they need to be comfortable sharing the information that they want. And if you do that, then you can create a very valuable service. But I think a lot of what we're doing is as much psychology and sociology as it is technology. So now, I mean, we're building a technology company, so I think a lot of people focus on the CS type courses that I took, but the psychology stuff was very interesting too. On the computer science side of things, I kind of found that there were two types of courses. I mean, there were the highly theoretical ones, and then there were practical ones where you actually learned how to build systems. And the theoretical ones were very intellectually interesting, but the practical ones, you learned real stuff, right? And I think it's easy to say, you're taking a computer science course in college, right? This somehow isn't the real thing because you're just solving problem sets and it's a much smaller scale than some company like Facebook might be. But it's actually all the same stuff. So if you take those courses, you're learning real stuff. I mean, that was what I took away. When I took operating systems and some courses like that at Harvard, those were the things that enabled me to build the early stuff at Facebook. And now the people that we have are much better than I was. But
Well, that's great. Let me give you another question from BYU. What advice would you give to to budding entrepreneurs? What would you consider the character traits that are most important as somebody who's built something very, very valuable and is recognized all over the world? Give these young folks your ideas on that.
Well, I think you have to really love and believe in what you're doing. I think that's the most important thing, because if you go to start building something, whether it's a company or really you're trying to lead the world in any direction, large or small, it's hard, right? And you encounter a lot of challenges. And I think what ends up happening is that if you don't completely love and believe in what you're doing, it actually ends up being the rational thing for you to stop doing it or succumb to some of the challenges, because there will be huge challenges that you face. So any normal person, I don't think, would go want to build a company, right? I mean, the reason why I think a lot of people at Facebook and a lot of the other companies that grow can do it is because they just are really passionate about what they're doing. And I think like most people have something that they're super passionate about, and I would just encourage you guys to all find that thing. It's hard though. It requires introspection. I went through this period because I dropped out of school. I never had the chance to go travel around or anything like that after college. And I remember there was this period in 2008 where we were approaching having 100 million people using the service, so it was clearly something that was becoming more important to people. But we had this idea that it could be more, and we didn't know what to focus on. And I'd never really taken a step back to reflect on, what were the core things that I really believed in. And so I took a month and I traveled around the world and I reflected. And a lot of the founding principles of Facebook are that if people have access to more information and can be more connected, then that will hopefully make the world better, right? It'll make it so that people can have more empathy, can develop and maintain more relationships, they'll have more understanding, they'll have access to more information that they want. And that's really the guiding principle for me. And on hard days, I really just kind of step back and that's the thing that keeps me going. So I think, it's important if you're going to take on any big challenge that you just love and really have faith in what you're doing. And I don't know, that I think is the most important advice that I would say, more than any kind of specific technical thing about how to build a company or anything like that.
Great. Well, you're getting some really good advice here today on how to do all this, and that's terrific. Let me just go to another.
So do I get to ask you questions?
I'm not in your league. I don't think you do. But go ahead. Go right ahead.
So, I started off and I was trained as an engineer, right? And I did take these psychology courses, and that I think informed me. But one of the things that is completely new to me is how the government sees the evolution of the internet and the evolution of startups. So it's always great whenever I get the chance to speak with you to hear your opinion on what do you think Congress and our government should be doing to make it so that budding entrepreneurs can do what they do?
Well, I think the best thing Congress can do is keep out of the way. Yeah. Now, as you know, there are a lot of people who want to tax the internet. They want to take it over. There are real conflicts in this area. And my personal belief is that one reason we have so much innovation and ability in this country is because we haven't strangled the internet. We haven't overregulated it. And some of the larger internet companies want that regulation because it keeps their dominance alive. I personally prefer keeping innovation alive and have young people like yourselves who are brilliant and are coming up with these great ideas with every opportunity to compete. There's another thing we need to do too. We have the highest corporate income tax rate in the world today. Only Japan is equal to us, and they're changing theirs by April 1st. And frankly, we've got to change ours. The president said he wants us to reduce those rates, but he wants it to be revenue neutral, which means more taxes. And it means getting rid of some of the tax expenditures that really do work, like the research and development tax credit. Now, as you know, and when you started up, it was the Hatch research and development tax credit that helped you to get it off the ground. I think things like that are important things the government can do. When we can give some oomph and some push to some of the things that will help you get going. But I've been really, really pleased with what you've been able to do in the short time that you've been doing it and how effective you're doing it. Because we've seen, I remember years ago I brought Sean Fanning here when Napster came on the scene. And a lot of BYU students came out to hear Sean at that time. And that didn't last long because it didn't have the underpinnings and the basis that you've built into Facebook. So look, we're really proud of you. We're really proud to have you here. And you've got friends here, as you can see. And I want you to be my friend too. Let me ask you a question. I just want to ask you another question because I think they're certainly more interested in listening to you than they are to me, as far as I'm concerned. And you guys know how to hurt a guy's feelings, is all I can say. But I knew that, so I'm humble about it. Facebook sees third-party developers critical to its robust user environment. What is Facebook trying to do to promote a better development environment? You were talking about development before we got out here with the president of the university, our great president here. Tell me a little bit about that and tell all of us.
You know, it's interesting because you were just talking about how you think that a good policy for the government is to kind of get out of the way of companies being able to build stuff.
It isn't always a good policy, but in most cases it is.
So a lot of what we're trying to do is make it so that Facebook doesn't set up a situation where we're the only ones who can build innovative social apps that use the Facebook service, right? So we believe that there will be a much better service for all the people who use Facebook if millions of people across the world can also build services. And we have this belief, it's kind of this soundbite that we say internally that at Facebook that a good independent entrepreneur or developer should always be able to do something better than a division of a big company, right? So if you're building the next great music app, for example, is that going to be iTunes at Apple or some music thing that Microsoft develops? Or is it going to be a new startup that's getting built that can use tools that are out there, some of which we provide, some of which other companies provide, but someone who just focuses entirely on music or entirely on games or entirely on education or health or any important area. So that's what we believe, right? I mean, we think that our company understands the technology and social issues fairly well, but that a lot of the specific things that people are going to want to build that I think will bud into quite large industries, we're not going to be the best to build those. So we want to instead focus on building a development platform that enables entrepreneurs across the world to start companies that use Facebook tools and can just build whatever they want. And so far it's really humbling to see the success that a lot of folks have had. The biggest industry that's changed so far has been gaming. What if you looked at before Facebook and social games, I think a lot of the biggest companies were building console games, right? Xbox, things like that. I mean, publishers like EA. And now there are these companies like Zynga or Playfish or Playdom that I mean, the total market cap that they're building is worth billions of dollars, right? I mean, it's a completely new industry, and the interesting thing is that these are games that are designed from the bottom up to be played with people around you. And I think that same dynamic is going to apply to a lot of other industries as well. You know, if you look at other technology platforms, whether it was how people originally brought PCs into their home in the late 80s or early 90s, or what people are mostly using on their smartphones, iPhone, iPad, Android devices. A lot of the apps starting off are games, but I don't think anyone thinks that the PC is a gaming platform or that the iPhone is a gaming platform. I think people just think that games are kind of one of the first things that are taking off on them. And I think the same is true with the social platforms that are getting built, where I just think that there's this huge opportunity for disruption in any area that you might be passionate about, and we want to make it so that people can build those things. So I think it's fundamentally tied to what our success is going to be long term. I mean, again, we don't want to build the music app or the games or the education apps or the health apps. We want to enable independent entrepreneurs to do those things because we just think we'll build a much stronger ecosystem of apps that way.
Great. Well, let me ask another BYU question. The internet is powerful. It has so many benefits, and there's so much more potential, but some people think there could be a dark side out there as well. Now, how can we maximize that potential while minimizing both the dangers and government control?
Well, I don't know. I'm going to ask you the same question when I'm done. But, you know, the things that we focus on are, we think that if you go back maybe 10 years, a lot of people were really afraid of sharing things on the internet, right? And one of the things that I think got people initially very comfortable with having a page on a service like Facebook or being willing to share is that, you know, we offer these extremely robust privacy controls where, I mean, literally any piece of information that you share, you control exactly who sees it. And knowing that you can put something up that only, you know, the people at your school can see, or only your friends, or only your family, or a subgroup of friends, that makes it so that a lot of folks now feel like they understand where their information is going and feel comfortable using services like this. And what we're seeing over time is that people are starting to really understand that there's a huge amount of value in sharing a lot of these things and staying connected to friends and family. But a lot of our job is to protect the downside for people too. So we're really focused on safety, especially children's safety, right? I mean, folks under the age of 18, we just take a lot of extra precautions to make sure that it's just a safe environment for them to use the service. That, you know, the default for people sharing things isn't that they're sharing with everyone, but that they're sharing with a smaller community in that. But I think that's a lot of it, right? I mean, we really try to build a safe environment, and I think that's going to be the key long term.
Well, I really appreciate that because Facebook has a reputation of trying to keep Facebook clean and get rid of obscene materials. In fact, Mark and his team, I want to applaud Facebook for this because they belong to the Family Online Safety Institute. And they're looking at ways of trying to keep obscene materials off the internet. And I think he deserves a lot of credit for that. Well, in the same vein, what other steps, this is another BYU question here. These are good questions, by the way. I'm pretty impressed with my alma mater. In the same, now I do have to say, that I'm crushed because we didn't win last night, but they played a heck of a game, is all I can say. To have those two 6'10" really great players right there underneath, it was pretty tough on our team. But I am so proud of that whole team. So proud of Jimmer Fredette, Jackson Emery. I could go on. Let me ask you this question. In the same vein, what other steps is Facebook taking on the security front to help protect its users from bad actors?
Yeah. So I mean, I think a lot of security, it goes down to what I was talking about before, to just providing a safe environment where we are really vigilant about making sure that that there are few bad actors and that people can share safely and understand that they're in an environment where the stuff that they're sharing goes to exactly the people they want. But there's a lot of other really meaningful steps that you can take along the way as well. So I'll just list off a few fairly technical things that we're doing. We're one of the first products, I think, that offers people the ability to have all of their information and their sessions on Facebook be encrypted if they want, right? So go over HTTPS instead of HTTP. I don't think we're the very first, but I think we're probably one of the most complex services that enables people to do that, which means that if you're in a public place and you're using Facebook, you can make it so that people, it's just extra hard for people to get access to any of the stuff that you're using. Going back to the theme that I was talking about before around the intersection between technology and sociology and psychology, one of the things that we do is use your social connections to provide extra security for you. So if you log into Facebook from a new place, and we want to make sure that that's actually you and not someone who maybe has tried to steal your password or something like that. So we've invented some new security measures, like we'll ask you some questions that only you would know. Where like we'll show you pictures of a few of your friends and say, which one of these is not one of your friends? And someone who wasn't you probably would not be able to answer that. And if you ask the person 5 of those questions, then the probability that someone can get past that is extremely low. And those are things that I think a lot of other services can't do, or they haven't thought of because they're not approaching technology as a social problem. But we just really want to make sure that people have these authentic experiences all the time, right? I mean, that they feel like Facebook is this really secure place and that it's 100% safe. And we're always thinking about little and big things like that we can do to keep it safe for the people who use our service.
Terrific. I'm interested in the global impact of technology education. And one of the BYU students said, what are some ways that technology can enhance the more traditional styles of learning?
Well, how long do you have?
Well, we got a little bit of time yet.
Yeah. I spent education is a big passion for me. So when my girlfriend graduated from school, she was a teacher for a couple of years before going to medical school. So I mean, those are kind of our 2 dinner topics: are Facebook and kids and education. She's probably going to be a pediatrician now, So we spent a lot of time talking about education, and we did a lot of research last year because we made our first pretty meaningful philanthropic gift to the Newark education system to try to really make that a little bit better.
Now remember, while you're doing that, BYU is a wonderful university, and
Sure.
Sorry, I interrupted.
Not really sure how to handle that. I think a lot of the same themes that
I think he's going to remember that. I really do.
What's up? I will.
Okay, you're on.
The time that Senator Hatch stumped me in front of 10,000 people. A lot of the same themes that we're trying to go for with Facebook, of making the world more open and connected, giving people access to more information, I think a lot of that stuff would help a lot with education as well. As a profession, it's really hard to know how students are performing at different institutions. Right? I mean, there's no consistent statewide standards for education. I think that's a really big issue, because if you don't know how well you're doing at educating students, then you can't know how well you're managing schools. You can't really know how much things are improving or where they should be. And I think a lot of the same principles that the internet has brought to other areas of just making it so that you have more transparency and can tell how things are performing, which then informs, okay, this thing is doing well, we should do more of this, or this thing isn't doing well, we should be doing less of this. Or this state's methods are doing less well than this state's methods, so we should try to do more of what these guys are doing. There just isn't a lot of that in education yet, and it's one of the biggest holes, I think, and one of the biggest areas that I think technology can help improve is just in measuring. I mean, obviously, there's a lot too that can be done with curricula. I mean, there's some great things that are getting built online now. Have you guys heard of this thing, Khan Academy? It's pretty amazing. This guy basically just started, again, because going back to the theme of what makes you get started as an entrepreneur, I mean, he was just passionate about like explaining and teaching things, and he started recording these videos of himself explaining different concepts. I think he started off with high school type level concepts, and you could just go to his website and you can watch these videos really quickly, and he just lays out these pretty complex concepts very simply. And again, I mean, that's like an amazing resource that the internet can bring to bear, right? I mean, giving the ability for one person who has a gift for explaining stuff to be able to explain that to a huge number of people across the world. So again, I think the ability to spread information, that kind of transparency, are going to be really disruptive in a very positive way for education. And it's something that I'm really passionate about personally. I'm trying to do it and help out outside of Facebook, frankly, because the current regulatory environment that we have in the US doesn't really make it easy for people under the age of 13 to use a service like Facebook, right? Because there's so much friction for them to have to sign up, because you need to get written consent from your parents. So if we were trying to do something as Facebook, trying to help out with education, we wouldn't even be able to touch most of the students that we'd be trying to help out because they aren't users of our service. So instead, myself and I'm actually working with a handful of people who work with me at Facebook, but we're outside of Facebook. We created this organization, Startup Education, that we're trying to improve education around the country. So hopefully some of these things can come to light.
Right, right. Well, let's keep going here. Here's another. I think you've asked some really intelligent questions on Facebook. What do you see as the...
Hold on, before we go there, I'm actually curious to hear your answer to the last question too, about science. I mean, I realize this is an interview. I want to make sure that I'm giving you guys good information, but I rarely get to talk to the senator. So, so this is my opportunity too to ask you some questions. What do you think are the things that we should be doing for education, especially
Right.
science and math and those types of areas?
I think listen to you more often. I think it'd be a very good thing, but I know that you're a big proponent of STEM, and that's science, technology, engineering, and math. And so am I. I have to say that for years I've been a leader in STEM and one of the sponsors of the Compete Act, American Compete Act, which hopefully will open the door for some of these young people to do good. I've also taken a leadership role in enhancing education through technology, and that's a very, very important thing. I'm also the prime sponsor of a very important bill called the ATTAIN Bill, or Achievement Through Technology and Innovation Act. Now that's to be done in accordance with the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. And we're hoping that more and more kids will get involved in that type of thing. So, and of course all the graduate work that can be done. You're such a remarkable person, when you think about it. You didn't get your degree from Harvard, and yet you're running one of the most important agencies in the world. And the reason you're able to do that isn't just because you're brilliant, but that you were interested and passionate about a lot of these things that we've just been talking about. I really have a great deal of admiration for you. And we've been friends for a while, and all I can say is that I can't tell you how grateful I am that you're here with our students here at BYU. It means a lot to me.
It really is an honor to be here with you guys, so I appreciate that. And it's amazing that so many people are here to hear us talk.
Well, if it hadn't been hailstorm out there, I think we'd have the whole place packed, you know. But this is a good audience, I'll tell you. Let me ask you another one. Let's get back to you. That's what I want to do. That's what they want me to do too. What do you see as the role of social media technology in helping us deal with some of our greatest global issues? Did you ever envision Facebook as a catalyst for reform that it's become?
You know, when we were getting started at Harvard, I remember I had these conversations with a lot of my friends where we all really believed that something like what we've done would get built. Just none of us thought that we would be a part of it because then we were college students. Like, how would we go build a company that a lot of people would use the services of? And you know, the things that we used to talk about when we used to go out and get pizza and hang out at local places and talk about like how different the world was going to be when people could connect more through the internet and could share more of what they wanted, and how that transparency and making the world more open and connected would be really transformative to a lot of things. And I think it starts off with giving people the ability to connect in ways that they couldn't before. And that's kind of the bottom-up effect that we're creating. It's making it so that people can now stay in touch with people that otherwise they wouldn't have been able to stay in touch with, right? I mean, a lot of it is because, frankly, maybe you'll call your parents or your 10 closest friends, maybe you'll hang out with your 30 closest friends, but you probably know hundreds of people, and it's like you're not going to necessarily make the time to go see all of them. But with tools like Facebook, you now have the ability to stay in touch with those people in a more passive way. It just makes it a lot easier. And I think that that's the basis. But we, I think over time, with that basis, you also will start to see some disruption in terms of how people relate to businesses and how businesses try to communicate with their consumers. I think that the dynamic there is going to have to be a lot more open, and I think you're already seeing that with the internet, is that businesses can't just like hide as like behind some big kind of corporate veil anymore. They really have to go out and engage with users in an open dialogue around issues that affect them. And I think that that's kind of starting to play out now. And then I think the longest term thing will be how tools like Facebook, but also just the broader internet, affect civic engagement and governance as well. And I do think in a way, the internet just gives everyone a voice, right? I mean, whether it's Facebook or something else that you're using, people now have an ability to share something, put their opinion out there, and have people hear it in a way that just wasn't possible 20 years ago, right, in practice. And I really think that the basis of all this is just this very kind of grassroots connectivity, the fact that people can now make friends and stay connected to their friends in an easier way than they were before. Therefore, they can share information with those people. Therefore, information about businesses that you're thinking about or governance issues that you're thinking about can be spread to your friends and can spread through society a lot more easily. And I think the disruption will kind of happen that way. But there's some pretty cool, meaningful things that we see. One of our engineers, for fun, put together this site, peace.facebook.com. And what it does is it maps out the friendship connections that are being created on a day-to-day basis between countries and regions that historically have had very tense relationships, right? So between Israel and other countries in the Middle East, between other countries, that's just like an example, between other countries that historically have had pretty tough relationships. And it's pretty meaningful when you see the number of connections that are forming. It really is it's a symbol, and in practice, it is like this empathy developing in the world between like people who otherwise may have not had an ability to connect. And I just have to think that over the long term, that's going to create more understanding between countries, more reasonable policies, more empathy, and just a greater understanding of how we are all connected, because we are. I just don't think we fully understand it yet.
Let me just, I've got a lot of other questions to ask you, but let me, well, this is one that I think everybody here, This is one I think everybody'd like to hear. What does Facebook look for in potential employees? And what can BYU students do to get themselves on Facebook's radar? I mean, if you're smart, you'll answer that question in a very nice way, and I know how smart you are.
Well, I mean, a lot of it is we just look for people who are passionate about something. You know, in a way, it almost doesn't matter what it is that you're passionate about. You know, Facebook at this point covers a lot of different things, and we develop a lot of different types of products. But what we really look for when we're interviewing people is like what they've shown an initiative to do on their own, right? So if you're an engineer, did you just go through classes and get good grades, or did you like building stuff for fun on the side? Right? Are you the type of person who built games or tools for yourself because you wanted those tools to exist? If you're in a management function, like what other leadership experience do you have, right? Not just what have you managed at other companies, but like what philanthropic stuff have you tried to do? What community engagement stuff have you done? What are you passionate about, and what have you taken initiative to lead? Because I think the reality is people don't get put into roles, they create them for themselves. And you know, one of the things that we're always thinking about at an organization like Facebook is we don't want people to join Facebook because of what Facebook already is. We want people to join Facebook because they think that it's so far from what it should be that they think it's almost broken, and that they are going to, by force of will, help it get there, right? And there's a lot of different ways to do that, and you know, what you do outside or before you came to Facebook doesn't necessarily have to be the thing that you do when you join, but you know, just looking at the people who have really taken initiative to do something in whatever way they're passionate about are the type of people who I want to have on my team.
Let me just ask one other. Kelly, indulge me for a minute, because I've wanted to ask this question personally, and a number of you asked this question on your Facebook page, the BYU Facebook page. Are you worried that advertisements take away from Facebook's coolness? And how does Facebook's ad model work, if you could tell us both of those?
Well, I mean, I think everyone likes the service being free. So, so I think that's from the perspective of people using Facebook, I think that's the bare minimum of how you should think about advertisements, right? At the very least, on their worst day, they are a good way to make it so that you can get this service that hopefully you enjoy without having to pay for it. You know, we develop all the technology in a way that is very sensitive to people's information. So there are these rumors that go around that, you know, we sell information, or advertisers get access to your information, and there's nothing like that, right? I mean, we never sell any information because people's trust is so important to us. Right? And if people thought that we were going to sell their information, then they wouldn't want to share stuff on Facebook. So it would be crazy for us to do that. Similarly, there's there I think is sometimes a misunderstanding that because, you know, an advertiser, you know, let's say you're a band and you're going to have a concert in a local city, and you want to advertise to people who like similar bands. I think some people have this confusion that that advertiser gets access to the people's information, but that's not how it works at all. I mean, people just put in what type of people they want to target. Okay, I like people who, or I want to reach people who like rock music or whatever the specific zone is, and then Facebook does the targeting, right? So no information is ever sold. No information ever goes to advertisers. At a minimum, the ads keep Facebook free. On good days, we hope that they are creating valuable content, and because you know, we see that a lot of people, you know, use the ads on Facebook to find movies to go to and find things like concerts to go to, that I think people actually get a lot of value out of them too. You know, I mean, maybe it isn't the primary reason that you come to Facebook. Obviously, you're trying to stay connected with friends and family, but we really think that over time they're going to become a really good part of the experience too.
That's great. Well, we're at the end of the program.